Yes, yes, you are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. And we are streaming on Rumble. We are streaming on X. We are streaming on YouTube. And we are streaming at WYAB.com. So if you can't pick up the blowtorch that is 103.9 WYAB, you can always catch us on the stream. If you haven't yet, would you please follow me on X? It's just at Andrew Gosser, AndrewGasser. And the number to the show today, if you want to be part of the program, it's a 601-879-0002. And the text line is open too. And I'm grateful and thankful for all you texters. You gave me some great stories today that we're going to cover. 601-879-5060. Today is Tuesday, January 6th, 2026, the 5-year anniversary of January 6th, where our government attempted to overthrow itself, where it came against the people. The mission here at the Andrew Gosser Show is standard. We are here to equip the saints. Who are the saints? Y'all are the saints. And we're going to therefore go and encourage one another and build one another up, just as we're already doing. Yep. And in the second segment of the show, Miss Lori Cyree will be on the air with My Brother's Keeper. You know, she and Marie Thomas just did amazing work supporting all of our J6ers who were wrongfully incarcerated in prison. And they did just amazing work writing letters, sending care packages. And we won't spend the entire show on January 6th, but I do want to spend a significant portion, at least the first 2 segments, on it, because those who forget their history are doomed to repeat it. And we are just getting to a major inflection point inside the United States of America where it just seems we're not sure who we can trust, who we can't trust. We've got stories in the media today where the news is not reporting the news. They're reporting propaganda, left-wing talking points. And we have to continuously point this out. We cannot rest on our laurels. You get an inch, you take the inch, and you keep the inch. You don't end up getting to take the whole mile. But if we give the other side an inch, they'll end up taking a whole mile. And you can see it in the fraud scandals, not just with the Somalis, but all over the place. And we've got to update too. Apparently, it appears as though the UN envoy to the country of Somalia is also wrapped up in this fraud scam. And it's just absolutely heartbreaking to see. I'm almost to the point to where I feel our government is so out of touch with the citizenry. We almost need to sit there and do a serious reexamination of what all of our different agencies and departments do. If the fraud is as expansive and as deep and, quite frankly, as expensive as it is, why do we even have those departments there? Just shut them down, cut off the spigot, and work through the wickets to get people back on their feet. We've developed a culture of depending on the government for existence. And when that happens, we end up losing our way. But with that being said, I have a bookmark here that I want to play. You've heard this before. But this is Nancy Pelosi on January 6th, 2021.
We have responsibility, Terry. We did not have any accountability for what was going on there, and we should have. This is ridiculous. You're going to ask me in the middle of the thing when they've already breached the inaugural stuff that should we call the Capitol Police? I mean the National Guard? Why weren't the National Guard there to begin with?
They thought that they had sufficient
That
resources.
is not a question of how they have been. They don't know. They clearly didn't know, and I take responsibility for not having them just prepare for more. We have
And that is then Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, admitting and taking responsibility for the debacle that was January 6th. Over the past years, 2 years that I've known Lori and Marie, I've got to meet some of these J6 protesters who got rolled up by the federal agents that were in the crowd that remember we were banned from X or then Twitter. We were banned from Facebook. We were banned from TikTok. We were banned from Instagram. We tried to start up our own platform, Parler, if you remember that, and that got delisted by both Apple and Android. When you think about it, it's just by the grace of God that somehow Elon was able to buy X. I genuinely believe that if we didn't have X today, we would be in a lot darker place. The public square is absolutely important in our society, which is why so many people went to protest the election of 2020. And when you think about it, what were they protesting? They were saying that the election was stolen. And so many of you had your First Amendment right silenced. You had it taken away because you were spreading misinformation. You were harboring misinformation. 2025, 2026 rolls around. We now know that the state of Georgia should not have certified their election because of that county that encompasses Atlanta, Georgia. 315,000 uncertified votes for Joe Biden. And let's be truthful here. We all know Joe Biden wasn't there all mentally. He had issues. Why wasn't the US Constitution and the 25th Amendment enacted? Why didn't we go ahead and remove that president? Now, granted, what would have came behind in Miss Kamala Harris, that might be a real issue there of why they didn't do it. But look, we got what we voted for, and then they stole it because we all voted for Trump. Georgia voted for Trump. And if they wouldn't have had that one county in Georgia, and that's just that one county, that how many other counties had, issues that they ended up certifying that shouldn't have? And don't forget, it wasn't just the presidential election that was stolen. There were Senate races that were stolen as well. And with the death of a California congressman, don't have his name in front of me, but with the death of the California Republican congressman yesterday, which was announced, I believe, late last night, that margin in the House is even getting smaller. You got MGT on scuba diving, snorkeling, whatever she's doing out there in Costa Rica, who was also in charge of Doge. I wanna know what changed with her. It just seems like the more that she found out, the more off the reservation she became. With respect to January 6th, I've talked to military veterans, doctors, regular civilians, and the stories that they told in their captivity in the DC gulag with those judges who were just making rulings based off their feelings and not based off the US Constitution and the laws. it should scare the heck out of all of us because they've done it once. Can they do it again? Do they really have the ability to try another January 6th? I'm gonna say this, it won't be a January 6th, it'll be something different. But as I'm looking here at all the news that's just flowing in front of me as we give the opening monologue, there is so much out there to discuss. There's so much out there to ponder and work through. Not just me as myself, but as us as a community, the show, the station, the platform. We literally cannot keep up. We cannot keep up with the news cycle, whether it be Venezuela, whether it be Iran, whether it be the fraud scandal. And ladies and gentlemen, you all giving me calls and telling me about it. And that's why it's even more important now that we continue to stay in touch. And we have this story right here from the Associated Propaganda, Associated Press. Michigan teachers waiving in lessons on January 6th uprising into history classes. State standards require social studies to cover pre-Columbian history to the present, which challenges teaching events like the January 6th insurrection. It wasn't an insurrection. There's been no court case where insurrection has been found. We do know that there were federal agents in the crowd provoking. We do know that the police officers were using excessive force. We do know that they fired off tear gas and rubber bullets, but the people weren't throwing an insurrection. Maybe the deep state was, but I am very agitated by that word insurrection because when I think of an insurrection, I think of the Wisconsin Capitol in 2018 when they just completely took over and filled the Capitol and wouldn't leave. That is an insurrection. When you have federal agents inviting people into the halls of Congress and then trying to say that they staged an insurrection. I do have to say, I did not appreciate those who did make it inside the Capitol who went on to the Senate floor and tried to give a speech in a Viking uniform. That's just never gonna be acceptable. But to all those moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, young kids who are just going there to exercise their First Amendment right legally and peacefully, and then have their government turned against them. Nah, man, that's not right. And we can never forget January 6th. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9. We're going to take our first break. We will be right back. Hi, Miss Lori. Are you there?
I most certainly am. Good morning, Andrew.
Good morning. Good morning. We're in commercial break. When um
Understand.
when we get back, I'm just going to ask you for your opinions on it. I'm not sure if you got to hear the show or not, but
I did listen to the last few minutes, yes.
yep, I'm I'm saddened that we're not having a more uh, information come out on what the government actually did. But I really want to focus on the J6 men and women and your efforts, because what you and Marie Thomas did was absolutely huge.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yep. I'm gonna put you on hold, and then when we get back from the break, we'll bring you in.
Thank you.
Yep, yep. Oh yeah, welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. On the phone with me is Miss Lori Syree, one of the two Wonder Woman of Mrs. My Brother's Keeper, Mississippi. Miss Lori, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Andrew. How are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. It's nice and warm down here. I'm not having to worry about the snow. Farm's doing good, life's doing good. I'm doing great. You know, today is a very special day where all Americans, all patriots should look back and think about how close we were from actually losing our representative republic. And there were great people out there who did as much as they possibly could to support those people who were wrongfully incarcerated. And you and Marie Thomas were two of those ladies. And I just wanted to give you the platform to talk about your experiences in the last year since the J6ers have been pardoned, and now they're trying to restore their lives after what was taken from them wrongfully.
Well, in the last year, I don't have as much to say. I've not been in contact with them as much, but I know that they're trying to regain some sort of balance in their life and go on and move ahead. And I know that many of them stay connected to one another, which is so important and so heartwarming to know that they can come together as only they can only really understand each other like no one else can. I will say that some people that have stayed in contact are people that I never actually wrote to in the beginning, and that would include a young man named Nathan Bear, and that is so amazing. But they're going on with their lives, and they're thankful to have their freedom back, and we all thank President Trump for pardoning them.
Absolutely, the pardon had to happen, and also though there with the pardons, we're not done yet. That's not where the mission stops. We have to actually go after these judges in the DC district who are making these rulings, these erroneous rulings. And have you heard anything about any way to try get reparations from them for these
I do.
J6ers?
I am aware. I'm sorry, Andrew. Please repeat that.
Are you aware of any efforts to go after these judges for their actions, for the rulings that they were ruled? They made rulings that were inconsistent with the Constitution. You know, I mean, they suspended the habeas corpus rights of how many J6ers? Hundreds of them. So,
Yeah. So I know that there are class action lawsuits taking place, and I know that a lot of people are involved with that. I also know that there were over 1,500 arrests and over 150 people were incarcerated for 2 years or more. Some of those people, several of them, would have faced up to 20 years in prison had they not been pardoned. So, yes, there are many efforts underway at this moment to get justice for those families and those individuals who went through incredible trials. We had several people commit suicide, January 6ers, as a result of what has happened. It really devastated lives. But thank God they're pardoned now and they're out reclaiming their time and their life together.
that is absolutely heartbreaking to hear, and, you know, the J6 community, they are a band of brothers and sisters, but a band of brothers just much like military folks are a band of brothers. Those of us who deployed together overseas, they deployed to the DC Gulag, and I just because the J6 prisoners have been pardoned, I still wanna continue to use this platform to bring, people on the radio to let them have their side of the story, to see what happened, because if we ever forget what these people went through and what our government did to us, they'll just do it again, and they'll do it in a different way, but we'll end up having to go through the same things again. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what My Brother's Keeper actually did do for the J6 prisoners and what we're doing now?
Thank you, Andrew. I would love to have that opportunity, and I appreciate you having me on today. My Brother's Keeper Oxford started as just a desire to represent Mississippi's own well, to represent our state well. We decided to reach out to any January 6th prisoner, descendant, or family that had grown up in Mississippi, moved to Mississippi, or were incarcerated in the state of Mississippi, because we had men from all over this country who were incarcerated in the Yazoo City facility. So we wanted to represent them well and hoped that that effort would spread to other states so that every January 6th prisoner, descendant, and family member could get help and that their names could not be forgotten. And as you mentioned, also, never forgetting what has happened, I would like to call on our legislators and people in the positions to do this to create a memorial at our state capitol and list every January 6th prisoner and defendant that was part or associated with the state of Mississippi. I would love to see that happen. I would love to see that effort spread to every state across this country, because almost every state had January 6th prisoners, descendants, and families. We just everywhere we went, we spoke for them. We had a website, mybrotherskeeperoxford.com, which led people directly to commissary accounts, directly to Gives and Goes. We took nothing. We sent them directly to those people and gave them their addresses so that they could write to them and get to know these men and women who are so much just like us, just average people, entrepreneurs, and really there's a vast number of them who were veterans, who were police officers, paramedics, firemen. These people are the kind of people who run in when there's trouble, who run into the burning building instead of running away from it. They are heroes in life, and they were heroes on that day. Some of them, as they sought to save the lives of other people, because many people died as a result of being at the Capitol on January 6th or shortly thereafter.
Yep, and I wanna make sure that we remember that too, because there's gonna come a time where people will say, "Why didn't you do something? Why didn't you go out and try to stop this?" And I pray, and I know that you and Marie Thomas will be, on that side, but I pray I'm on that side too, where we all stood up and said, "We did everything that we could to try to right this wrong, that we tried to correct it." Um, the work that really inspired me, and the thing that really, sets an example for any other type of organization that does stuff like this is how you set up the links to the commissary accounts. You gave out or mailing addresses for these men and women, and you never took a penny. And I can say this personally, I saw the stuff that you did. Without going into anything particular, the amount of letters that you, Lori Syree, wrote and the amount of letters that Marie Thomas wrote, it's absolutely staggering, and those are historical records as far as I'm concerned. I hope that those, somehow get preserved in a way that is, available for future generations to see just how much pain and anguish the government actually put upon its people, claiming it was a peaceful, non-stolen election, uh, when it actually was. I mean, our First Amendment rights, our Fourth Amendment rights were completely trampled on that day. I'll give you the last word, Miss Lori.
I would like to recognize, thank you for that opportunity, Andrew. I want to recognize David Clements, Professor David Clements, who started the Prisoner's Record Telegram channel, because he is the one that made it possible for so many of us to learn about these prisoners and these families, to get addresses, and to represent them as best we could. When he started that channel, then also Marie Goodwin and Paula Galloway joined in and started the Patriot Mail Project. And that was a bridge between the general public and these incarcerated individuals. And so without these We the People types who stepped up and did what they could, we would not have been able to do what we did in Mississippi, and other people in other states would not have been able to do what they did. Amani Grow in Florida, there was Caitlin Marver, who was known as Maga Mouse, who was also an advocate. Were it not for the work of Professor David Clements, Paula Galloway, and Marie Goodwin, we would never have had the opportunity to engage with the Patriot Mail Project, which made it possible for us to lift up these prisoners and families and defendants the way we did. So many thanks go out to every person who became a part of that, and for Professor David Clements creating that channel that provided an opportunity to do so.
Miss Lori, you are truly a treasure to Mississippi and America. Marie Thomas is truly a treasure to Mississippi and America. My brother's keeper, Oxford, is a treasure and to the state of Mississippi and to America. And I just can't thank you enough. And after the show today, I'll give you a call. We have to catch up and have lunch soon up there in Oxford.
I'd love that, Andrew. That would be very good. And I would love to also invite you to come to the meetings that we're having, the events with Professor David Clements in both Ridgeland and Oxford on February 19th and 20th.
Will you do me a favor? I will happily, I'll have to see if I can make it, but, I will definitely talk about it because, in the next segment, we're gonna brag about you, Miss Lori and Miss Marie, about all the stuff you did and how you did so from a humble servant's heart and how you didn't seek recognition or fame. I'm pretty sure this wasn't on your 2020 bingo card to end up getting involved with My Brother's Keeper, Oxford, but yet here we are in 2026. So, if you get me that information, I'll definitely talk about it.
Thank you so much. I'll be glad. I just want to say one thing to the general populace that might be listening. You know, Jesus said that we are the light of the world, and small things that we can do, we should do. I look at those small opportunities as a candle that we can carry. They're little ways that we can make a difference in just a few lives, but it's a difference still. And so everybody, you have the power to change the world. If not the world, you can change the world for one person. So get out there and try.
Amen to that. That is such a great way to end this segment. Miss Lori, God bless you. Thank you for all you do. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Lori Syree from My Brother's Keeper, Oxford. We're going to take our next commercial break. We will be right back. Lori, are you there?
I am. Thank you so much, Andrew.
That was really great. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show and giving us that update. And I'm in break. I've got to run out of the studio real
I
quick, but
understand.
I will talk to you after the show today. Okay?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it, Andrew.
Yep. Take care. And we are back here at the Andrew Gosser Show. And, that's a great thought I had about Lori Syree and Marie Thomas. They are just two women who are actively engaged in their community, that they care about their country more than they care about themselves. And they put themselves out there into the public forum. And a lot of people took shots at them. A lot of people got really upset at some of the stuff they were doing. And isn't that truth about life in general? Those of us who actually go out there and do the job and do the things, who make statements out there, whether they're correct most of the time and incorrect once, all it takes is one misspeak, and all of a sudden, they will sit there and they'll go after you and they will attack you. But those 2 women are so bold and courageous. They're truly Proverbs 31 gals, and, we salute them and their efforts. And it just goes to show you whether you have an enormous impact and can jump into the political sphere and in the world sphere like a Donald Trump, or whether you can impact a single life, whether you can impact just your local community. And I'm excited because I have actually a few examples of that, but, the good book says that you leave the 99 for the one, and that's how I wanna be. I wanna go after the one. I hope I get 99, but I wanna go after the one. One of the big stories coming out, um, from the press today is how the United States overhauls childhood vaccine schedule. And I'm pulling this first part up from Ground News. On Monday, federal health offices revised the U.S. childhood immunization schedule, recommending 4 fewer vaccinations and reducing routine coverage from 17 to 11 diseases. This is great news. And another great woman who's doing just amazing work here in Mississippi, Mary Jo Perry, MPVR, Mississippi Parents for Vaccination Rights. We are finding out more and more that these vaccinations, while they might have some good effects, primarily stopping the viruses that they're supposed to, they open up all sorts of other complications. And we can never forget this. As much as so many of us love them, it was Ronald Reagan who signed the Pharmaceutical Protection Act of, I think it was 1985, that basically gave our pharmaceutical companies complete carte blanche, complete protection for any harm that their vaccinations might do. Health and Human Services assessment of about 20 peer nations found that the United States, out of step with President Donald Trump's, or out of step after President Donald Trump's ordered a December review with Tracy Beth Hogue and Martin Kuldorf examining vaccine protocols. And people were like, "Well, what happened here?" They were classified specific shots moving rotavirus, influenza. I'm not even going to try to say that. Meningococcal disease and hepatitis A to shared decision making, while the CDC now recommends a single dose for human papillovirus vaccination. Officials said that federal insurance programs, including Medicaid, will continue coverage. And what we need to really understand is that is the vaccine that we got in 1972, 1973 when we were younger, is it the same vaccine that we get today, or has it been refined? Has it been redeveloped? Is it using mRNA type of technology? That scares me. If they can change your DNA code, what does that mean for future generations? The move skipped the usual advisory committee on immunization practices review, raising procedural and legal questions, while other observers called it a seismic shift by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And we are so grateful for RFK Jr. That's a whole nother scam, a whole nother fraud where you couldn't say that call it the Chinese virus, even though we all know it came from Wuhan. I remember calling it a Chinese virus, and the local paper got all upset with me, saying I was causing potential fear and violence against Chinese people. Absolutely not. Whatever happened to our critical thinking skills? I almost feel like they're going into our controlling us through these anxiety devices, slowly building fear up. And it's a generational thing, and I am so grateful, by the way, to Clay Edwards, who brings me on twice a week to talk to him about certain issues. And we were talking about it, how politics is a long game. This is a long game too. If they would have tried to enact the stuff on January 6, 2020 in 1990, would have been a very different outcome, and we all know it. If they would have tried to take the vaccinations that they're trying to give to our children today, back in 1973, very different outcome. And it takes generations and generations of gentle pushing, careful manipulation, guidance to get the people and the population to where you can have a more authoritarian government. And you can see that there's an indelible human spirit of freedom and liberty and righteousness. Look no further than the country of Venezuela. And there's 2 parts to this Venezuela story that I wanna get to. One is the military success of it, but the political side of it cannot be just summarily brushed aside. On the one hand, we've gone in and we've ousted a dictator with known ties to Hezbollah in Iran, with no ties to the Chinese People Liberation Army in China, with known ties to Russia and the drug cartels coming out of there, and with known ties to the South American and Central American drug cartels. These people are responsible for bringing in thousands and thousands and thousands of tons of drugs, whether that be fentanyl, whether that be cocaine, not so much marijuana anymore. We've kind of legalized it all over the place. And you sit there and you look at how much damage has been done by this regime, the Venezuelan regime. And that doesn't even include the fact that they're selling Venezuelan oil to China 40 cents on the dollar. They're selling Iranian oil to China 40 cents on the dollar. These are all links that were happening under this guy. But yet, let's see here if we can listen to the distinguished Hakeem Jeffries, Democratic Minority Leader, U.S. House of Representatives. This is, I believe, on NBC's Meet the Press.
Well, there's been no evidence that the administration has presented to justify the actions that were taken in terms of there being an imminent threat to the health, the safety, the well-being, the national security of the American people.
Can you believe that? Basically just saying, hey, it's okay to do all the fentanyl you want to do. There's no imminent threat. I absolutely love how you have the liberal crazies out there protesting us taking down a dictator and the people of Venezuela thanking us for liberating them. And it wasn't just in New York, you in and around America where Venezuelans were celebrating. And if you go online and you can go on X and you can see all of these videos of these Venezuelans in America celebrating the removal of this guy. But what you probably won't see unless you really look for it specifically are all the Venezuelans who live in places like Chile and Brazil, where they're out there celebrating as well. We've gotten rid of a dictator and we've started to slow down the capacity for China to buy cheap oil. Do I want China to get oil? Sure. but I want them to pay the fair market price. And this doesn't even include this doesn't even include all the military backing that Venezuela got from China, from Russia, from Iran, and how they funneled that backing into countries like Cuba. Ladies and gentlemen, this was right in our backyard. And again, it's history repeating itself with just like the Cuban Missile Crisis. They realized that they couldn't use nuclear bombs, so instead they had to go ahead and build up a drug cartel and start importing that stuff into the United States, whether it be on a boat, on a sub, on an airplane, or over land. Do you remember in 2017, I think it was, when it was estimated that the border fence would cost $4 billion, and the Democrats said it wasn't affordable? And now look at us, a mere 9 years later. That's a cheap check to write. The trillions of dollars now in fraud. Oh, it makes my blood boil. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. We will be right back.
And, he's a violent guy. He gets up there and he tries to imitate my dance a little bit. But he's a violent guy, and he's killed millions of people. He's tortured. They have a torture chamber in the middle of Caracas that they're closing up. But
Oh, yeah, we are back. And the news is breaking fast and furious up in Minnesota. And if you thought I was done talking about the invasion from Somalia and how they're taking our resources and using them against us, if you think I'm done talking about how immigration, customs, and border patrol are going after all these illegal aliens, you're very mistaken. I genuinely think that this is the closest alligator to the boat that we need to take care of. There's lots of alligators that need to be taken care of, and we do have to walk and chew bubble gum and pat our stomachs at the same time. But this is just absolutely insane. When you have businesses being run by people who hate the country that they're living in, and they're profiting from it, it's wrong, and we simply cannot tolerate it. We as Americans. And the truth is with this whole Hilton story that we're gonna talk about in the next hour, who kicked it all off? Nick Sorter, a private journalist. He had the stones to go in there, and he recorded the whole thing up there in Minnesota. Another citizen journalist. Let me ask you, ladies and gentlemen, where was CBS? Where was NBC? Where was ABC? Or any of the cable news outlets? Do you see a trend starting to happen here? I I genuinely what this looks like to me, quite frankly, is the late blooming millennials and Gen Z types finally saying, "We've had enough of the old way of doing things. We're gonna take the ball and run with it when it comes to stamping out corruption and fraud and waste and abuse." And just like these Gen Zers, they don't understand what we as Gen Xers or as baby boomers or as the greatest generation saw in these news services. It's so evident to anybody who's paying attention that they are bought and paid for, which brings you into the last point. But as we get ready to go into the break, are these giant corporate conglomerates. Back in the day when you had all sorts of different hotel chains, and now you just have these big chains, whether that be hotels, whether that be airlines, whether that be defense contractors. We have to realize that capitalism and our representative republic is the best way to go. But we have to constantly be vigilant. We have to constantly be on the lookout. And when we find corruption like this, we go after it. We don't sit there and just put it around. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. We're going to take our top of the hour break. We will be right back. Welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. We are streaming on Rumble. We are streaming on X. We are streaming on YouTube. And we are streaming at WYAB.com. So if you can't pick up the 50,000 watt blowtorch radio signal, you can always listen to us on the stream. And we appreciate that. If you're not following me on X, I would appreciate that as well. It's just Andrew Gosser, AndrewGasser. And the phone line to the show today, if you want to be part of the program, the number is 601-879-0002. The text line is open at 601-879-5060. Today is Tuesday, January 6th, 2026. And the mission here is standard at the Andrew Gosser Show. The mission is to equip the saints. Who are the saints? Y'all are the saints. And you know what? We are positive around here. Everybody, I got a couple of random anonymous texters, unknown texters, never texted before, but saying how negative and gloomy I was. I think I'm pretty encouraging. I think there's a lot of stuff to be thankful for, but we can't forget the negative history in the past. We have to make sure that we don't get rid of that. So therefore, encourage one another to build one another up, just as you already are doing. And we will continue to do that. One of the ways I can continue to build people up is Cindy Crane, a local patriot out there, is going to be running for mayor. And I'm really excited for that. She's going to be running for mayor in the city of Carthage. And this is exactly what this show wants to support and inspire and have other people run for local offices like this. She's going to be great. I'm really grateful and thankful to know Cindy. She's been a great mentor. She's been a great confidant. She's a great patriot. And it all goes back to the second rule of politics. Control what you can control. She's a small businesswoman, does great work, and I'm excited to see her continue along her journey. With that being said, we've got to absolutely talk about Hilton and Evergreen going out there and denying service to the federal government. Now, they have a right to deny service. They do. As a private company, you can deny service, but you also have to go ahead and make sure that you pay the repercussions of that service. And that service is going to be you fooled around and denied ICE the ability to spend the night at your Hilton hotels in Minnesota. And now you're in the fool around phase. You're going to the find out phase. You're going to find out. And again, an independent journalist, Nick Sordor, it's 5 minutes or 4 minutes and 46 seconds. I'm not going to play the whole thing, but he goes in there and just confidently asks the local manager, hey, can ICE and Homeland Security spend the night here? And the kid says, nope, he just talked to the owner, not going to do it. Well, it seems to me that Everpeak, who owns Hilton, doesn't want to do this because they just completely removed that Hilton from their database because of it. Hilton Hotels is finding out quickly, and they're going to have to come out and explain to the American people and to the government why they're not supporting our troops and our people, our brave employees. You got to be brave to do the ICE job, and especially going into those communities that they're about to go into. They're saying that it's going to be a 2,000 person surge, 2,000 person surge over there. And that's good. We have to start taking our country back from wherever it is that It's been taken from us, whether that be Seattle, Washington, whether that be Dearborn, Michigan, whether it be Columbus, Ohio, whether that be Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota, or whether that be from somewhere here in Mississippi. You have to take the fight to them, because if you're having the fight taken to you, and you're more on the defensive, that's not the best way to fight a war. The best defense is a better offense, which has been proved time and time again. All the defenses in the world didn't help us at Pearl Harbor, and all the defenses in the world didn't help mainland Japan either. You think about and again, this is not conventional warfare that so many in Gen X were grown up to. And I've gotta talk about I'm weaving in several stories here, but you'll understand. We're not fighting put the tanks on the ground and roll and take territory. This fifth fifth level of warfare, they're using our resources to fund themselves, to equip themselves, and then fight on our soil. And it might not be guns, but it could be drugs. There might be violence, but it could be you losing your home. How the war is being fought today is nothing like it was fought even just 6 or 7 years ago. It's just not. I got this text from I'm in a group text with a bunch of great guys. Oh, yeah, and Ron Eller just texted in and says, "Don't forget about New York City with the communist, the Islamic socialist, Zorhan Mandami." And we were talking about that too. If anybody listened to him with his statement, how he personally had a personal phone call with the president to express his displeasement of taking in Maduro. This is just someone who does not understand U.S. politics, but but what he does understand is how to control his people. And if he looks tough, if he comes out with strong words, that's all that really matters to the left anymore. Slogans and sound bites. No meat, all sizzle, no steak. That's what they are. That is what they are. And we have to continue to go out there and go after these people where we get them. But there was a group I was in. I'm trying to find it here real quick. Here it is. Here it is. And it is a very prominent X account. So we should. And what they're saying is so we could have just coptered in and snatched Saddam Hussein instead of mounting a giant invasion with hundreds of thousands of dead. Interesting. I agree with this dude's sentiment. If first of all, hats off to Delta and 160th SOAR. If you know, you know, in this operation, absolutely great job. And we make it look easy. But as many of us know, the only easy day was yesterday. And the amount of training that those operators and those pilots flying those copters have is truly obscene, and it's expensive. But what that this person fails to take into account is all the intelligence gathering apparatus that was used to go ahead and get these guys plugged in and trained up. I'm just gonna make this suggestion to everybody out there who's agreeing that, "Hey, we should have done this in Iraq, or we should have done this." We didn't have the F-35 in Iraq. We didn't have the EA-18 Growler in Iraq. We didn't even really have the F-22 at 9/11. There were a few out there, but we didn't even have that. We certainly didn't have the computing power, the AI processing power to go ahead and go dig and look for certain things. So when people start armchair quarterbacking military operations, whether they're really good or really bad, I get kind of testy with it because unless you're actually in the room, you're doing the op part of it, you really don't understand all that goes into it. Those of us who've been part of a project like that understand and kind of take a wait and see kind of approach. Those of us who uh, get paid to come on the radio and talk about it, we do talk about it, but I hope you hear it in my voice that I'm doing it with a reverence and deference to those guys. What this does do is prove a capability that we've always talked about for the longest time, and now other countries like Colombia, he's already spouting his mouth off. You know, are we gonna try the same thing? I don't know. I bet you they'll look a little bit different. I would say this operation does kind of have a Osama bin Laden feel to it in that we were able to infiltrate in, although with the Osama bin Laden raid, if you remember, that was all over land, and, we had to use some special stuff there to get in there, but again, our special operators did the job, and every time our special operators are called in to do a job, they're gonna put their best foot forward. Failure's not gonna be something they even trained for. They're gonna think of all the possibilities and possible, steps that might happen, and they're gonna go out there and they're gonna execute, and it's just my opinion, but I don't think there's another military out there in the world that can compare to ours. We pay a pretty penny for it. I think we're almost at a full trillion a year now. What are we buying? What are we doing? My goodness. We have serious shortfalls, not necessarily in recruitment. Recruiting is up, by the way, absolutely, meeting and exceeding all the numbers that we need to get. But I'm telling you that there are shortfalls with our equipment. Hours rack up on airframes really quickly and on our vehicles that the Army uses. People get trained up, and as quickly as they come, their 20-year career is over, and now you lose all that subject matter expertise. Our Navy is in a shipbuilding crisis. I do not understand how the admirals, in conjunction with our political leaders, allowed us to get into this situation, unless they were on the take from China and Russia, which could happen. And we just have to continue to remain vigilant. But to everybody who all these Democrats who are sitting here complaining about how we could have done this with Saddam, or maybe that's more of a right-leaning thing, maybe the anti-war folks. We could have just gone in and swooped in and got Saddam Hussein, Uday and Qusay, and it would have been better. Different cultures too. The Iraqi culture is so much different than the Venezuelan culture. And, continue to send your videos of Venezuela celebrating in New York City in front of all those protesters. That's really great. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. We will be right back. The news is moving and grooving here on the Andrew Gosser Show. This just came in via text. New records show U.S. Capitol Police Captain Michael Byrd, who fatally shot an unarmed J6 protester, Ashley Babbitt, is been involved with an unauthorized daycare operation in Maryland. And this is coming from Paul Sperry on X. Guys, you can't make this stuff up. If the fraud is happening in the Somali community and the fraud is happening in the American community, maybe this whole system that we have right now, our entire government, is fraudulent. If Georgia in 2020 would have went the other way, we would have had all of these problems that we have now, but we don't get to go back in time. You don't get a redo button. This isn't a video game where you can just hit the reset button and away you go. Lieutenant Michael Byrd, who shot Ashley Babbitt dead on January 6 in 2021 in cold blood, runs an unaccredited daycare center in Maryland at his home and has pocketed $190 million in HHS funds. Wow, that kind of blows away some of the stuff that's going on in Minneapolis, St. Paul, don't you think? It all comes so fast and furious that it's really hard to keep up with everything that's happening there. And this is coming from Red State. This is the actual story itself. I'm going to read it right here. They're attributing this to um, social media journalism. So none of the mainstream media wants to run with this yet. I'm looking for something coming from CBS, ABC, or NBC. Of course, they're not going to do it until they have to. And that's why I love the time slot in the show, because as news breaks, we can actually bring it to you. More fraud. HH links to Somalia's UN envoy to Medicaid fraud scheme. This is coming from Ground News. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz announced he will not seek re-election amid criticism. And U.S. Attorney, and it's been linked that the Somalia's UN envoy is tied to Medicare fraud. Gateway Pundit, Trump administration Department of Health and Human Services is signaling that major revelations are imminent involving Somalia's sitting ambassador to the United Nations. I mean, at this point, not only do you have the country of Somalia, but you've got delegates to the United Nations getting involved with this. Thank you, Dave. You said you wanted to see it on X, so we can put that on X for you. The fraud is so rampant, and then meanwhile, we're struggling in Madison, Mississippi. I don't know if you saw the local news yesterday, but the Madison Board of Supervisors approved a road bill without the city of Madison. And my thought to this is as a former county supervisor myself, is municipalities never got county funds. Now, what we would do is if we had a county project that was going through a municipality, a county road that intersected with a municipality, we would sometimes tie in contracts to get better pricing and do those jobs simultaneously, specifically with road and drainage issues. But it's just amazing to me to see the amount of fraud that is happening all around this nation, where they're taking advantage of us here in Mississippi. They're taking advantage of you. And then it goes back to how come people aren't being arrested and perp walked, and I don't have a good answer for that. I don't have a good answer for that at all. But but the fraud is continuing to um, be exposed. We will hit $1 trillion in 1 year of fraud. You know, we would almost have a balanced budget if we got rid of just those fraudulent programs. And here is some information, and everybody's saying, "Oh, Andy, you're trying to take away certain things," but I always like to tell the truth to this audience. I never wanna sit there and not cover a story because I don't agree with it personally. Abortion stays legal in Wyoming as its top court strikes down laws, including first U.S. pill ban. And this is coming from Associated Propaganda Press. Abortion will remain legal in Wyoming after the state Supreme Court struck down laws that include the country's first explicit ban on abortion pills, ruling Tuesday that violate the state's constitution. Justices sided with the state's only abortion clinic and others who had sued over bans passed in 2022. That year, the U.S. Supreme Court overruled the landmark Roe v. Wade. And it's to be expected because it's a states' rights issue. And what works in Wyoming might not work in Mississippi, and what works in Chicago, Illinois, will definitely not work in Mississippi. Babies are a gift from God, and only women can have babies, by the way. All of you trans out there who think that you can have a baby, you can't. You either got it or you don't, depending on how you see it. But this will sure to spur some new debates. And today, being January 6th, is also the first day of the new legislative session here in the state of Mississippi. Congratulations to State Senator Don Hartness on taking the oath after winning a special election out there in Jones County. It will be interesting to see what the state Senate does now that it doesn't have a supermajority anymore after the redistricting. And there's some really great articles on Magnolia Tribune. Everybody knows I enjoy Magnolia Tribune. Russ Letourneau is doing some great work there. And there are 3 really good stories, and I'm just gonna kindly quickly go over each one of them. Speaker White previews his House education freedom reform. Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann outlines his state education priorities for 2026. And it's interesting, if you go through it and read the 2, you can clearly see that there is definite differences between the thoughts of the leaders of both bodies. It's just my opinion in reading this that the speaker, Jason White, has a little bit more for the parents' rights, and Lieutenant Governor Hosemann wants to make sure that public schools don't end up losing funding, and I can respect that. But I would also say with this public-private school debate is that there has to be protections for public schools to where people just can't start driving 30 minutes away to go to a private school or a public school when there's no capacity to have them, number 1, and number 2, the school has to be able to say no. The school has to be able to say no. That's my Clay Edwards addendum to my thoughts on private schooling. We send our daughter to private school. We pay the public school taxes. We don't complain about it, but it sure would be nice if we could use our tax money that we pay for our child to go to where we want her to go to school, to where we feel she can get the best education. But there's 2 sides to every coin of that too. What happens if all of a sudden, we have Christian schools all around, there are Jewish schools all around, but what happens if someone wants to open up a madrasa? Andrew, what's a madrasa? It's an Islamic school for kids. Do you want your taxpayers going to that? it's a valid argument. If I can send my kid to a private Christian school, why can't I send my kid to a private Islamic school? People could say, "Well, this country is born on Christian values, and we've got the proof and the receipts to show it, and the Islamic faith doesn't really match up with what we're doing here." I could buy that agreement, and I would agree with that. But you know that there are gonna be people who are waiting to sue just the moment that happens, much like the Sharia law that is quietly creeping across the United States of America. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. We will be right back. Yeah. Welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show right here on 103.9 WYAB. Time flies when you're having fun, and there's just so much that we talked about today. With it being January 6th, it's one of those things where I look forward to remembering it, but I don't like the events that would happen. I don't like the fact that so many Americans lost their First and Fourth Amendment rights. I think about it right now. WYAB, we could do the show, but we couldn't reach everybody that had a computer because our streams would be blackballed and listed. They wouldn't be accessible. Many of you out there who do your own small podcasts or large podcasts, you had your free speech restricted. And we absolutely have to remember that, and we have to continuously be on guard, remain vigilant to protect those things. Detroit, Michigan. Ford Motor on Tuesday said its U.S. vehicle sales last year increased 6% to achieve the company's best annual sales since 2019, coincidentally, before COVID. The Detroit Automatic reported sales of 2.2 million vehicles in 2025, including a 2.7% uptick in more than 545,000 units during the fourth quarter. That's a lot of units. Notice what it's not talking about here. It's talking about how they're ending their electric vehicle lines. Not until the very end of the story. Typical journalism. And it's just a shame that so many people thought they could get into the EV business, but they couldn't. You know, Elon was the one who put the way, the path forward. He actually, did you know that Tesla puts all of their battery technology online, fair use, free for fair use? And yet these major big car companies, they can't seem to figure out how to make it happen. So Ford is out of the EV business, which is really good. Did anybody watch the CBS News last night with their new type of reporting? I didn't. I didn't hear anything. And there are people who are truly upset at CBS because Barry Weiss, who took over, she is changing it. I don't know if they're going to get rid of 60 Minutes yet. I've heard the rumor. I've seen the texters. I appreciate you all giving me this information, but there's no evidence yet that they've canceled 60 Minutes. But they are changing it, which I'm grateful for. And if we can get just one major news station to change its business model, its news journalism plan, maybe that forces the other public broadcasting companies to do the same thing. And this station, by the way, does cover CBS, or CBS News is what is run here on WYAB. It does need to be changed. I talked about it earlier, but now I've got the specifics on it. California Republican Representative Doug LaMafia dies at 65. GOP majority is now just 5 seats. I remember back in the day, you know, the average majority was 15, 20 seats. We're so polarized anymore. And that's what really upsets me with what's happening here in Mississippi, where we've got these super majorities. We should just be plowing this legislation through. And we will have some people coming on who are going to be talking about the different legislations that are going through. And we're going to push one here at the Andrew Gosser Show as well. We're going to talk about it more and more. But sometimes you just have to let things breathe a little bit. Trump, two more Trump stories that I want to talk about before we hit the break. Trump warns he'll be impeached if Republicans don't win midterms. You think? We're so polarized. We're so divided. We don't even spend holidays together anymore. You can't even say Christmas anymore. You have to say Happy Holidays. We had the video. We had the audio. President Donald Trump warned House Republicans that if Democrats retake the Congress in the midterm elections, he could be impeached for a third time. Trump urged party lawmakers to highlight his policy accomplishments to improve their chances in the midterm elections. There are plenty of positive things to talk about. And like we had Hakeem Jeffries on the show earlier, where he was absolutely blasting the invasion of Venezuela, and that Venezuela has no threat to the health, safety, and let's just play it.
Well, there's been no evidence that the administration has presented to justify the actions that were taken in terms of there being an imminent threat to the health, the safety, the well-being, the national security of the American people.
Do we really want that guy with the gavel in the House of Representatives? I don't think so. I do know that the 2nd Congressional District of Mississippi by Benny Thompson is gonna have a challenger in the primary and a challenger in the general too. Let's go ahead and take this call. Go ahead, you're on the air.
Hey, Andrew. Hi, this is Pastor JB.
Hey, Pastor JB, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, doing great. I got a text this morning from the SPLC, and they're talking about school choice. I have a problem with Delbert Holtzman. Anytime you line yourself up with the SPLC, I got a problem. Okay. And then you're talking about keeping the house. And even in the state house, it was Delbert who, I think he did this redistricting thing.
Yes, he did.
Okay. So the callers, the listeners don't need to forget that.
I don't want to
Don't
forget
need
it
to
either. I
forget that.
try to bring it up every time I get it, Pastor.
Exactly. And I appreciate that. But it's one of those things, lest we forget, he'll wind up in the governor's office if we're not careful.
That's going
Thank you.
absolutely, Pastor JB, and I really appreciate the phone call. I really do. It's number one, politics, elections are not won in a single day. They have enormous events that shift the direction of the election, but it's not won in a day. It's something over time. And when it comes to Delbert Hosemann, look, right now, everybody knows Agriculture Commissioner Andrew Gibson has declared and thrown his hat into the ring for governor. As far as I know, that there's nobody else who's formally thrown in their hat into the governor's race. It is suspected that Delbert Hosemann will run. It is suspected that Chad White may run. I've also heard Lynn Finch and Andy Watson's name mentioned, although I've never heard it from anyone close inside who has close personal connections with anybody. Yeah, I don't know if they would, but it scares the heck out of me. And speaking of Lynn Finch, really quick, Pastor, speaking of Lynn Finch, she will be tomorrow's guest at the Grip and Grin at Mama Hamill's at 11:30. Their monthly meeting over there of the Republican Party. They're going to be there. Let's just take another phone call here. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Good morning, Andrew. How are you?
I'm hanging in there, my brother.
Interesting call you just had there about the hose man is what I call him. Because he's always hosing somebody, mostly Mississippian. To change gears a little bit, if I had to illustrate you as a character, I would call you the Lone Ranger, maybe Marshal Matt Dillon, the typical good guys, the guys that did things the right way, the legal way. Okay.
Yep.
But unfortunately, when we have representatives starting to disappear in California because we can't get redistricting done like we want it, and we have individuals suddenly have a change of opinion, Marshall Dillon's not dealing with the bad guys of his day. He's dealing with Hannibal Lecter and the Joker. These people don't care how they get their way, as long as they get their way. It makes no difference if people have to die, be killed, disappear, or whatever. And every now and then, you're going to have to be a Dirty Harry. You're going to have to sit down and roll around with them because they don't respect law and order. Marshall Dillon and the Lone Ranger, when the bad guys got abducted, they put their hands in the air and gave up. These guys don't do that, Andrew. They don't do that.
Nope.
They do not. They do not respect the painstakingly slow legal process that takes place because it doesn't work anymore. I mean, and until you start fighting fire with fire, things like representatives in California disappearing, that's going to continue to happen. Somebody's going to have to get their attention. Just like you got this guy's attention in Venezuela, those people that surrounded him, those Cuban guards, they are, as Rush Limbaugh used to say, have now assumed room temperature.
Yeah. Well,
and until some of these people assume room temperature, you're not going to get their respect, and you're certainly not going to get their attention. So just preach it, brother. You are the Lone Ranger. You are Marshall Dillon. You are Andy Griffith, but you're not dealing with the bad guys of that day. You're dealing with people who do not care how to get it done. Let's just get it done.
Well, there's a reason I'm the way I am, though, brother.
I get it.
Because I have seen it when both sides decide to go nuclear. And I'm not saying that won't happen. But every chance I get it out to try to get away from that, as long as it's reasonable, I'm going to do that. But I truly understand. I mean, Clay and I were talking about this. The right, we're very slow to anger. We don't want to sit there and do that. But if that were to ever truly kick off, come on now.
Well, it's kind of like you said the other day. The Chinese and the Russians, understood our capabilities and are fully familiar with that. But the wow factor is that, wow, they really did that. We have to have a wow moment where they look and go, wow, the Republicans really did that. Or let me rephrase that. The conservatives, specifically the Christian conservatives, have to do something. Jesus flipped some tables, brother.
Yep.
He broke some stuff. And I'm sure there was no legal precedence to what he did because he saw what was being done as wrong. And there's got to be some tables flipped over, brother. We're going to have to break some scales. There's going to have to be something that says, they will respond in like manner. That's what it's going to take, brother. It's going to have to rattle that tree, brother.
At some point, the tree of life has to be watered with blood of patriots and villains. Someone said that. Brother, I got to run. I got to take my last break of the hour. But I appreciate the phone call, my friend. You are listening to the Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9 WYAB. We will be right back. Oh, yeah. Welcome back to the Andrew Gosser Show. We went a little bit long in that last segment, so this is going to be a quicker one. But what I wanted to say was, Pastor JB, I am so grateful and thankful I got a guy like you out there, a brother like you out there who's listening in, tuning in, calling in, supporting me. It's good to know that I fall under the cover of godly men. And I know that we probably don't agree on everything all the time, but I do know that if I got something screwed up, you would call and, it's Proverbs that says, and I'm paraphrasing this proverb here. I should have it memorized, but I don't. But the kiss of or the rebuke of a friend is a delight. The kiss of an enemy is to fall. And what that basically is saying is, if your friend's coming to correct you because you're screwing something up, be thankful. It's better than being kissed by your enemy. Kind of like Judas. Don't want that. Pastor JB, I appreciate that so much. It was a crazy show today. I really enjoyed it. It was great to talk to Lori Syrie and reflect on January 6th. Let's never forget that. And just like the last caller, Richard said, the tree of liberty has to be watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And I'm not going to come out here and, endorse that or anything like that. But I understand that's how it has to happen. I just don't want it to happen. I don't want to have to go through that. But then at the same time, you could say, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? And it's just a situation where we as men and women of this country should be able to figure it out without having to go down a really dark path. You have been listening to the Andrew Gosser Show on 103.9 WYAB. Lindsay's up next on the Lindsay Beckham Show. Be blessed, everybody.